Bear With Us is back with another off-season episode. Nick's back from his bachelor party. He's ready to tell us about it. We're going to go through everything from Jalen Johnson's deal to Ryan Poles' latest presser comments to even what's the Bears' win-loss total projected to be from Las Vegas, and do we agree with it? That and plenty more on this episode of Bear With Us. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Bear With Us. I'm your host, Robert Schmitz, the editor-in-chief of Da Bears blog, right here with my co-host, Nick Whalen of Football Guys, looking to build the best Bears podcast we possibly can. Nick, man, it has been a week. We got a pro day on your birthday. You had a bachelor party. You got a haircut for everybody that can watch you on YouTube. It's a whole new Nick. How you feeling?
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, a lot has happened. I basically said Caleb worked out for the Bears as a birthday gift to me is kind of what it felt like. I mean, we just lost Fields and he's trying to make it up to, Bears Nation. So I just took it personally, but I actually have a story, man, from my bachelor party. I thought that fits with what's going on right now in the sports world.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
So, March Madness is going on, right? And again, most people are watching March Madness, and I will be completely honest. I'm not normally huge into it. I'll watch some, but as you guys know, we do this podcast weekly, sometimes most a couple times a week, and we're following everything football, and I've got my coaching stuff, so I can't spread myself super thin. So sometimes I'm just like not following college ball. But my buddies are like, "Hey, bachelor party, we're gonna be like in a casino a lot, and we're gonna be like betting on games." And so I'm like, all right, I'm in. So now I'm researching, because I'm gonna
Right.
make some informed decisions. So here's the story. So we watched a few games, obviously Thursday, which were awesome. The Oakland upset, which we were all
Awesome.
pro Oakland, which by the way, the Oakland, the 3-point shooter, he's from Wisconsin.
Are you kidding?
So, it kind of felt like we're a part of that, and then Friday we're doing the same stuff, but Saturday, okay. I'd won some on Friday and actually after the whole weekend between betting and slots, all 5 of us were up money, which is kind of surprising.
That is surprising.
But here's the story, everybody. Okay, so you could just bet on one game, but the parlays are the fun thing, right? Stringing together a few bets so you can get some huge sum is that's the fun part. So I put together, I hit on a couple smaller parlays, but I have one here, okay, and I'm just gonna read it off to y'all, okay. So Saturday, I bet basically all 8 games, and so did one of my
All
buddies.
8? You bet all 8 of the games?
All 8, yeah.
Okay.
It's a $10 bet, so we're not getting crazy here, y'all, okay? I work in a school, I don't make a ton of money. So, it's $10 bet, and I picked, each game I thought was gonna win, right? So, I'm just gonna go through it with you, and you'll see, okay? So, I bet Illinois money line, right? Because, hey, a lot of
Smart.
people know this game, right? Okay, they hit that one, so I'm good there. I picked Arizona money line, okay? They hit that one. I picked Gonzaga with the spread against Kansas, and they covered,
They handled.
which was good. North Carolina with the spread, good, okay. Iowa State with the spread, I'm good. NC State money line against Oakland, which is kind of sad because you want to see the guy continue.
Right.
That one was good. And then my buddy had Tennessee with the spread, and they didn't cover, so he lost out on his, right?
Okay.
But I picked Tennessee money line, and they won.
And they just eked it out.
So it all comes down to late Saturday night, right? Because it's okay, we could go
What's
do
the
some other
payout
stuff.
on this, Nick? What's the payout?
376 is what this would have
That
been.
ain't bad.
Not bad. Not a bad ROI there. So it all comes down to I picked Oregon +5 is when I got at the ticket. Okay. So Oregon can lose, but only by 4, right? So it's coming. They're up. I think it was 2 at the half or something like that. And so I was like, oh man, so I'm locked into this, And so we're watching, and the first game or the end of regulation, one guy, I believe, misses a free throw, which would have put them up 3 or potentially 4. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to happen, right? Misses the front end of a 1-on-1. Creighton goes down, ties it. Oregon throws up a prayer, doesn't get it. And I was just like, oh boy.
And they go
Okay.
to overtime. I remember
Overtime.
this.
Overtime,
So
right?
they don't even just losing like a normal team.
Right. Right.
You're fine. But they go to overtime.
Either way, I'm like, oh, this is tight. It's perfect. It's not like fouling. It's going to go up, over
Right.
my threshold of 5. So then it goes to the first overtime, and they get down by 3, and it's late, and I'm like, oh no. And Oregon chucks up a deep 3, and I was like, oh, hits it. It's tight. It's like, oh, here we go. Creighton goes down. I'm like, just make the last second shot. I don't care that much. Make it. I'm still within the 5, right? They don't. They miss. Goes double overtime, and then they hit a 3. They hit a 3. They hit a 2, and then they lose by like 18 or whatever it was. So it didn't hit, but we were all right there, all pumped. And I know everyone knows that or can like sense that. So even though I didn't hit that one, ended up positive, which is good, but it was exciting, man.
That's so fun.
So yeah. So I thought that was kind of a fun, like kind of culmination of the weekend.
Well, I mean, it sounds like it was celebratory, right? And not
Yeah.
to pivot back to the pro day we mentioned earlier, but did you watch anything from that USC pro day? It was your birthday,
I,
so if you're busy, you're busy.
yeah. I watched some. I didn't watch all.
The funniest part to me, Nick, was at least in the early goings, it was, you get your media tweets about, hey, we see polls, we see Eberflus, here they are, they're talking with Carl Williams, and then we get a couple more pictures. You start to see the Washington staffers, they look outright mad. Like they look bummed out. And then on comes Keenan Allen. Look, if you're a Bears fan, the fact that we're talking about the pro day, it's like, boys, you're late. And I get that. But I feel like, Nick, you and I haven't gotten to talk about how it is sweet to see a player out there at a potential future teammates pro day. Like, look, do I know Keenan Allen was Cruton? I couldn't tell you. But to me, Nick, the moment Keenan Allen showed up, it turned into, oh, so this is like the celebration of a done deal. Like, this is the champagne bottle popping. And Caleb looked relaxed. I think maybe 1 to 2 balls hit the turf. 1 ball sank on him. Look, I'm not here to analyze the pro day. He looked like he was fluid and easy. It was nice. Like for a day that I think a whole lot of people had hyped up as, oh, this is the guy that didn't give the Bears their medicals. So therefore, they couldn't do this, that, and the other in free agency. I thought it was nice to kind of get a day to be like, this is the likely next quarterback, Chicago Bears. And he looks pretty darn good.
Yeah, it was cool, I think, that Keenan showed because I don't think that's something like he had to do
No.
or the staff made him do. But again, he went to Cal. He's from North Carolina, but he went to Cal for college. And he was just in LA, with the Chargers. So like he's there, but like that's also leadership. Like you showing up, like, hey, I want to like think about this. He's gonna leg up on DJ Moore, right? Because that's how it works, right? Like, hey, getting good with your quarterback, he'll look my way a little more, give me some more balls. Like, that's fine.
So
Now, the other joke though, Robert, was he really there to talk to Caleb about like, okay, who's gonna take number 13?
I think it's hilarious. I don't even know if Caleb wants number 13.
I
But
don't know.
beyond that, Nick, one of the things that Keenan being there reminded me of is one of my favorite parts of this trade. And it's very, very meta, right? You and I could talk about how good Keenan is in short areas of the field. You and I could talk about how Keenan Allen's game seems like it should age pretty gracefully. You and I could talk about how insanely statistically productive Keenan Allen is. We could talk about all the things about the football field, but let's talk about the locker room for a minute because I think there are so many quarterbacks in this league that fail because they don't have somebody that is good enough or legend enough that when that player tells them to shut up and do it this way, that they just say, yes, sir. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
you need leaders, but a leader. So one of the stories that I remember from way back when, do you remember when Pernell McPhee was a Bear?
Oh my goodness,
I
yes.
remember when
Baltimore Raven.
Pernell McPhee comes over from the Baltimore Ravens, signs a big deal with the Chicago Bears, gets hurt nearly immediately, and tries to be a leader from the sidelines. And if memory serves, there was a particular game where Jay Cutler threw like a second or third interception, and Pernell tried to get in his face, and Jay wasn't having it because here's this guy that's hurt trying to tell him what he's doing wrong, and
Right.
Jay's like, sit back down on the sidelines. Like,
Right.
I'm not going to have it from you. And I can't help but think, Nick, maybe I'm off my rocker here. But if Caleb Williams is in Washington, Terry McLaurin's pretty good. I think Terry McLaurin's super underrated,
Oh yeah,
really
I love him.
dangerous football player. But when Terry McLaurin says, hey, Caleb, we're not really throwing it that way, we're throwing it this way, do we know Caleb Williams is going to listen? I can't say I'm certain. If Caleb Williams went to New England, what is Tyquan Thornton going to tell him how to play the game?
Oh man,
If Caleb
bad.
Williams went to New York, is Jalen Hyatt going to tell him how to play the game? Is
No,
Darren Waller, Wandale Robinson is going to be the
no.
guy that he shuts up and listens to? But when
Mm-mm.
Keenan Allen says, man, if you don't get that ball out as I'm breaking, that's getting broken up. We can't have
Mhm.
that. Caleb's going to
Mhm.
be like, yeah, you got it, Keenan. Like, I'll have it to
Mhm.
you, or like, I'll get it to you faster next play. And when
Yep.
DJ Moore says, man, I don't need it over my right shoulder. I need you to put it over my left shoulder. I need that
Yep.
ball to be there. I will fish it off the sidelines if I have to, but that can't be over on this side of my shoulder. Caleb's going to say, yeah, you bet, DJ, because DJ's a good football player, but he's still like football head level football
Yep.
player.
Yeah. He's not Keenan Allen level.
Keenan
for
is
sure.
walking legend. And
Yep.
that's the kind of guy that I can't help but think can congeal a locker room and create a really holistic development environment for a rookie quarterback where Caleb does not immediately feel like he has to be everything and can instead just play his part. And I'm so stoked the Bears have created this development bed, Nick.
Well, it kind of reminds me of like, if we relate it to high school, like people remember playing high school ball, like it reminds you of like you have this group of seniors that's really good, and your quarterback's like
Yes.
a sophomore or he's a junior, and you're like, bro, like we'll carry you. You just have to do your part, and then when you're a senior, then you do it. Like it's the same type of deal. I mean, Flus actually or Poles actually just references y'all. If you guys haven't listened to his in Orlando, the owners meetings or whatever, he talked about this. He said about the Keenan Allen trade. He says, I thought it was an absolute perfect fit for a young quarterback in terms of understanding timing, space, and reading NFL defenses. He's like, it balances out our offense. You got DJ on one side, you got Keenan on the other, and you got Komet in the middle. And like the other part too is in terms of we saw last year what DJ Moore, the difference from Darnell Mooney, part of his season to Chase Claypool and Komet versus getting a DJ Moore was for Justin Fields. When things was a third down, when things broke down, when we needed a big play, he's looking just at one guy. If you can look at two guys, then defenses can't bracket a guy. Then defenses, okay, who's the best defender? You're gonna put him on which guy? You know what I mean? It opens up so many things. It makes things easy, which is what we have both preached all off season. You
Oh,
want
yeah.
to support a quarterback. And so when
And
all that pressure isn't on him, he'll succeed.
And it's so funny too, Nick, because we always want to boil things down to, well, yeah, that guy's good because he was going to be good, or that guy's bad because he was going to be bad, as if development isn't a thing. It's so funny because I'm going to pull a real, like a name out from a couple years ago, Nick. When I watch Daniil Hunter, you know who I see? I see Everson Griffin. Every time
Oh.
he gets a little bit older, I see somebody who it's obvious he absorbed everything from while
Mhm.
Everson was still in a Minnesota uniform. And you see the veterancy that Keenan Allen is going to bring to this Bears receiver room. And I tend to think his quarterback can absorb that. I have a very weird comparison that I did not plan on making tonight, but you've inspired me as we've been talking about this. Nick, if we're going to say rookie development is important and rookie development might come in some cases from veteran receivers, would you like to take a shot in the dark at who the leading receiver was for Zach Wilson's rookie Jets?
Well, Zach Wilson's rookie Jets.
I'm going to stall for you while you think, right? The idea here is
Corey Davis.
So Corey was second. Elijah Moore, 21-year-old, was first in receiving on that team with a whopping 538 yards.
So
Corey at 492 was just after him. Keelan Cole just after him was 449. But in top to bottom order, Elijah Moore was 21, Corey Davis was 26, Keelan Cole was 28. From there, the Jets add the best receiver that Zach Wilson's ever played with in Garrett Wilson. But he's a rookie. So now you've got an incredibly talented player. But it's not like he knows NFL ball. He's just more talented than everybody else that Zach's ever played with. And so Zach still has to be the leader. But it's not like he's got anybody that he's really able to take direction from either. Now, I think Zach Wilson is much more like when it comes to issues than somebody like Caleb Williams is going going to be. There's a whole rabbit trail we could go down about how I think Zach Wilson's film had a whole lot of holes that a lot of people just wanted to breeze right on past, not to mention overthrows, skipping reads, and a whole bunch of stuff that you hear applied to Caleb, but I just don't think it holds as much water with
No.
Caleb as it does with somebody like Zach, who basically played three, I think it was like two pretty meh seasons and one really, really good season at BYU.
Yep.
But the point I'm trying to make here is that the Bears are developing a receiving room. Okay, have you seen that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles meme? Right? The one where it's like Master Splinter is holding the hands of the young turtles, and then they all age up, and now they're holding an older Master Splinter up as
Oh, okay.
the bigger turtle. It's the whole like you saw
Yeah.
this with Eddie Jackson, right? Like one guy basically raises the rest of the room, and then the rest
Yeah.
of the room raise that guy.
Right.
This can be what Caleb Williams, I would hope, is within this Bears unit. Cole
Yeah.
Kmet, 5-year vet, knows what he's doing. Keenan Allen, 6-time Pro Bowler, knows what he's doing. DJ
Mhm.
Moore, now 2 teams, 1,300 yards last year, knows
Mhm.
what he's doing. I mean, you could design an offense that was literally as simple as C man, DJ Moore's the primary read. C zone, Keenan Allen's the primary read.
Yep.
Second read, Cole Kmet in many cases. Maybe it's your third wide receiver, whoever that is, in some cases. But you can pivot to Kmet and he can settle and find some zone space underneath. Oh, I don't like any of these options. Let me check it down to DeAndre Swift. Is that the best offense in the NFL? Nick, it doesn't have to be. It's just streamlined enough that Caleb Williams can do that. And then he can freelance if nothing's there, but it gives him a proper structure that helps him get the ball out on time and take a breath. Because while it is 2nd and 7, it's 2nd and 7. I mean, let's not forget that as much as USC is a popular team, I actually don't know how many games Caleb's played with. This is mostly a joke. Like, Caleb thrives under pressure. He played in the Red River Shootout. That's a packed out Dallas Cotton Bowl. That's in my home turf. I know how loud that stadium gets personally. But USC's Trojan Coliseum doesn't fill like an NFL stadium will. Like,
No,
if
it's not as big. I've been in the Coliseum. It's not
if,
as big.
if you're playing in Lambeau, there's an environment difference that I
Well,
think.
Dallas, right? Like, I mean, you're right there. That stadium.
Oh,
You
I
know,
was
you,
I was just even trying to pick the division. What I'm
right.
saying is, Nick, I think what the Bears need to be thinking about, and what I think Ryan Poles, we'll get to his presser comments here in a little bit, is already thinking about, is that there's going to be some random down, right? Like a throw to the flat on first and 10, where the DB dives, nearly gets the ball squeezes through, and the receiver catches it, turns upfield, gets knocked out of bounds 4 yards, 4 yards downfield. Happens all the time in the NFL. This is a normal play in the eyes of most NFL fans. But that's the kind of moment when the whole stadium is chanting skull, skull,
Yeah.
skull.
Yep.
They can get to a rookie. And
Yeah.
having somebody there to be like, hey, don't worry about it. We're going to run stick. I'm going to be there.
I could get open any play I want.
Throw me the ball.
Yeah.
And that, to me, those kinds of like, settle down. We're fine. It's not that Caleb's a baby. It's not that Caleb's some mental
No.
midget. It's that you've got leadership that doesn't
Well,
have to come from a 22-year-old. You know what I'm saying?
It's like exactly when that trade happened. I, as a fan, exhaled. You exhaled. Everyone exhaled because we knew what it meant. It meant that everything's going to be so easy for him. Like if you think of even the rest of the receiver room, you think of the rest of everything. Keenan's going to help everybody. He can help DJ because DJ's more like athletic based, but if he gets more technician based and learning more like Keenan does, it helps everybody. But what we wanted from Justin, what we want from any young quarterback is like it's one thing to make plays that the guy's wide open. It's another thing to anticipate. It's another thing to be on the same page. Like one of the issues with Caleb this past year was the receivers weren't on the same page with him. They didn't get open against man. They get open off of press, all that kind of stuff. If he can start trusting his offensive guys and hey, Keenan's going to get open 95% of the time, which he does, by the way, y'all. He's that good. And DJ is good too. That way he's going to throw the ball on time. Because the thing that makes Caleb superhuman is one, his accuracy, and two, how he can like make chicken salad out of chicken, you know what?
Yes.
And that's special because of how he is in the pocket and how he can see things and he can just contort his body and still be accurate. Like it's like awesome. But He doesn't have to do that every single play like he did at USC. He can throw on time. He can start reading defenses differently when you have Keenan Allen, when you have DJ Moore, etc. And being comfortable throwing on time and being that, remember Aaron Rodgers just like dicing up defenses down the field is going to further the development. Like this is, you talk about the Montez Sweat multiplier. Keenan Allen is a multiplier too. I think Kevin Byard could be too, and it's safety, but that's a whole other topic. And yeah, it just gets me excited because of, again, what Keenan Allen does and stands for. Speaking of, I know you want to get into the presser later, but one comment I do have is about polls about Keenan Allen too.
Fill it
They
in
asked
as we go. That's a
yeah,
good
yeah.
idea.
They asked about an extension about Keenan Allen. I think it was Courtney Cronin, by the way. And he says, for what he stands for, I'd love to have him here long term. And so, I mean, that could be, 1 year, 3 years, who knows what it is. But the other part of this is we always think about what they're going to do at 109, right? Let's imagine, even if they do have him here for 2 years, whatever, if they do draft a receiver at 9, okay, or 75, whatever, Keenan is going to help their development too. Like this multiplies by so many layers of what, when you have the master chef and you have all the junior people underneath learning to become the master chef, it makes the Bears so much better.
I agree. And not to mention, Nick, there's a YouTube channel that I found recently that I thought put this perfectly. So I want to give the QB room credit, right? This is NFL quarterback Kyle Allen talking with current and former pro and quarterback consultant Jordan Palmer about different quarterbacks. And one of the things Jordan said was so apt that I'm sharing it with everybody I get the chance to. He said the first thing I have to explain to college players is that the college game and the pro game are fundamentally different. The college game wants you to be creative. You have the space to do it. The hashes are wider. You can push receivers further to the numbers. The general, let's call it average play, is worse. So you can just be head and shoulders better than the person across from you. And in college, throwing to the flat will get you drafted in the 3rd round. But the plays where Caleb steps up in the pocket and then backpedals in the pocket and steps back up in the pocket and then shimmies out to his right and throws across his body for a huge strike touchdown. Any play where a normal person on Twitter would say, he's never going to do that in the NFL, which, first of all, Josh Allen's Wyoming film looks pretty much exactly like his Buffalo film. So there is something to be said for he very well may do it in the NFL, but let's assume that the Twitter person's right. The number one thing Caleb needs to learn is that throwing to the flat wins you an NFL game. Yep. Checking down to the crosser over the middle. Hip drop just got banned, Nick. You think DJ Moore's not going to break a tackle when somebody tries to not hip drop him, coming over the middle of the field?
Try bringing down Cole Kmet now.
Gerald Everett is a yak monster. You mentioned Cole. Gerald Everett is 250 pounds of raging bull when he gets the ball in his hands. And so there's something to be said here. For Keenan knows how the NFL game is played, and he can articulate it because he's a master. He, in particular, is a master of playing the NFL game. DJ Moore is basically playing college ball in an NFL field. He's putting up the deuces and running past you in many cases. He's an athletic phenomenon. There's not a lot of guys like him. It's part of why you and I think he's as dangerous as he is, and it's part of what makes him so amazing. I mean, that Washington game it still makes me smile, Nick, because somehow, DJ Moore caught for 230 yards, and we could still say 80 yards and a score got left on the field. It was something else, like watching him play that way. And so when I combine everything we've seen about Caleb Williams, look, there are longer breakdowns that I plan to make, and you need video to see it. I see every reason to believe that Caleb can play on structure and that this is a matter of not just game situation, Nick, but against Arizona State, against Stanford. Why do you have to play on time? The defense isn't going to do anything to demand that you play on time. Is it a shocker to you, Nick, that aside from 4 heinous reps, the best timing-related throws we saw from Caleb Williams came against a Notre Dame defense that he knew going into the game was going to whip his receivers? He had to go through progressions in that game because nobody was going to be open, or he just couldn't count on anybody to be consistently open. And so
Mhm.
because of that, you have to have 3-man reads.
Yep.
Against
But
Cal,
now you can count on people that get consistently open. Like it's night and
it's a
day, y'all. Like
different game
the it's
with
like
different concepts.
it's his sophomore season film, but better because he had Jordan Addison that year. When you have an elite that you can count on, the numbers are just different. The trust is just
Oh,
different.
yeah.
The timing's just different.
And you don't need to get to your third read if your first read's open. I
Right.
fully believe that if this thing works the way that Ryan Poles wants it to, that you and I are going to be talking about how good Caleb is, and Twitter's going to be talking about how overrated Caleb is, right? They'll say, what is it? He doesn't do anything. He just throws to his first read. He stares his target down. And it's like,
Yep.
yeah, it's an option route. He's
So
supposed to stare at him.
so speaking of how good Caleb could be, let me jump into this because you don't know this number. I just told you this before this. What do you think the over under is set for the Bears schedule for 2024?
So if I am Las Vegas,
Yep. Because last year it was 7.5 last year, I think, right?
yeah,
And the Bears were
and
at
they're
7.
playing a fourth place schedule. So
Yep.
if memory serves, they get Carolina, lol.
Mhm.
They get Washington, lol, and I think they also get New England,
They
don't
get
they?
New England. Yep.
Oh man, my gut says their win total is it something and a half? That's my one
Yeah.
question.
Yes. Most of them are. Yeah. It's something and a
Is
half.
it
Yep.
7.5?
It is 8.5.
Oh my gosh, they actually gave them 8.5 wins.
Yeah.
See, because that's the thing, Nick. I'm planning on putting something together about this because it's a topic that's too interesting to me. There's a whole bunch. I've had a whole bunch of inspiration lately. I'm excited about it. But so, one of the things that Nick I keep thinking about is that every time I look at this Bears team, I am met with the uncomfortable reality that it actually should be pretty good. The team that
Mhm.
they are building is actually pretty good in the
Yeah.
2024 sense. When you look at past number one overall picks, when you look at quarterbacks dropped into scenarios that had exciting receivers. Hey, last time we saw DeAndre Hopkins level player and a Will Fuller level player on the same team, what the rookie quarterback do
Oh my
before he got
goodness.
hurt? Like,
Yeah. Deshaun Watson was like
and
lights out. Dude,
that's
that Will Fuller, by the way, the mystery of Will Fuller retiring out of nowhere is just, I won't understand. I know it's a whole nother thing, but like, dude, loved Will Fuller.
oh yeah. And so
Awesome.
I don't the uncomfortable reality. Why is it uncomfortable, Nick? Not because I'm not a Bears fan, but because I do this all the time. I thought
Right.
Mitch Trubisky would be the Bears savior. I thought Justin Fields would be the Bears savior. I have told myself that Nick Foles was going to make the playoffs. Like
Mhm.
I have done this so many times. Haven't you? Haven't we
Oh,
all?
of course.
But
Yeah.
this is actually a moment where it should happen.
It
Like
should.
analytically speaking, it should happen. I
I
am
mean,
coming
I
to
mean,
you, Nick, as somebody who's trying to be a pessimist,
I
telling
know.
you that they are an edge rusher away from a legitimately complete team. And
Well,
that's if
I
they
mean,
don't add a blue chip receiver and just
right.
say, screw it, we're just going to build the Bengals offense. And we're
Yeah.
just going to add Jamar Chase to a team that already has like Keenan Allen, for crying out loud. There's not a great comparison across like the Bengals or whatever because there is no Tyler Boyd. In this case, you went from already an elite receiver room in Cincinnati to what if it was better? What if it had more juice? If you add Rome Odunze, if you add Malik Nabers, and if you don't, you add a Jared Verse, you add maybe Dallas Turner, or
Mhm.
maybe, do you want to talk about what Pohl said in terms of the other mystery position?
Well,
Because
I have more with this win total though,
go.
just for fun. So I think there's 13 teams. So the Bears are at 8.5, and there's a bunch of teams that are there. We'll just say those teams are even with them, whatever. There's 13 teams I think that are above them and 12 that are below them in terms of the win-loss total. Here's something I think that's kind of fun. Okay. And again, we'll get way more into this, Robert, when like schedule release comes out and all that kind of stuff. But just just for fun here. So of their schedule next year, you had mentioned those three teams. They have 6 teams that have a 6.5 win total or less. They play 6 of those teams. 4 of them are at home. Now, again, we also have to count in the Bears did get lumped into they'll play one overseas game. I can't remember where. So that'll take away a home game.
I
But
thought
still,
it's London, right?
yeah, London. Yeah. So that's 6 teams that they should beat, even if they say that's 5 wins, whatever. They play 2 games against teams with 7.5 win line total. Okay. So that's 8. Then they play 3 teams that are 8.5, just like them. So 11 games of the 17 are at their talent level or worse, and 7 of those 11 are at home. I'm just saying, man,
I
like
know.
like, and I try to temper it too. Like you're
I know.
talking quarterbacks, right? Justin Fields was pick 11. This is pick 1.
Yep.
He wasn't a Heisman winner. Trubisky wasn't a Heisman winner. This is like, and not just Bears fans.
Wasn't a 3-year starter.
Yeah,
Like there's
the generational thing, like we're not throwing out there. That's like the other draft experts, like Elway, Luck, Manning, and they put him in there. Like,
we
oh
didn't
man,
actually hear it with Joe Burrow. We didn't actually hear it with Bryce Young. We didn't
hmm
hear this about oh gosh, Carson Wentz. We didn't hear it about
Kyler
like
Murray.
Jared Goff was another one
Yeah.
I was going to say. Like some of these guys get the consensus number 1 tag, but nobody calls them generational for 2 years, right?
Yep.
Nobody, I mean, Nick, it wasn't long ago that our big argument was, well, yeah, if Caleb was in this draft, that'd be one thing, but it's
Right.
Bryce Young and it's CJ Stroud. Like you could
Mhm.
trade off of it's the right year to do it. And then if somehow you end up with a high pick next year, then yeah, I guess you do move on. And they did. Right? And
Yeah. Well, I mean, it worked out perfectly. We
it
talked
did.
about this. Like, this is y'all, like, before the Keenan Allen trade, we were all like, dude, what are we doing with all this money? Now you have Keenan Allen. Like, if you could go back in time and you're like, hey, you know what? You could have Bryce Young, and then people will throw in CJ Stroud. I'll even do that. I would rather have the setup that we have with all of the
Well,
picks.
knowing what we know now, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
And Caleb or CJ Stroud, I'd rather have that. Like, this is like polls knock this out of the park, y'all. Knocked out of the park. So let's
I'll
jump into
I'll
what you
do
talked
you
about.
I'll do you one further, Nick. I would tell you that the Bears are a miraculous 4th and 20 away from a very different situation.
420.
And then the year after that,
Thanks,
the
Lovey.
the Bears are a wild and crazy Dave Tepper and gosh, Frank Reich meltdown away from where they are right now. It isn't unreasonable that the Bears would be in a better place, but they wouldn't be where they are now without a little bit of luck. And I don't care the size of the horseshoe that Ryan Poles carries around in his pocket, because there's a saying in sports that if you know anything about sports, if you've ever played sports, you've heard this before. And that's that it's better to be lucky than good sometimes.
Yep.
And you know what? The Bears are a little bit of both. And
Yep.
we should be
Right
able
on.
to say that with our chest. The Bears have caught some breaks, but
Mhm.
they've had some ugly breaks go against them
Oh.
forever. They set Trubisky up pretty much perfectly, and he didn't take that next step. And what a punch to the gut that was. And then in drafting Justin Fields, I will say this, I don't know how you feel about this. I still think that the moment that the Bears drafted Justin Fields, they had already failed him. You had a GM in his 8th year. You had a coach in his 4th. And if they didn't find some way to win, they were gone. Then they were gone. It's not the next GM's fault that he looked at a roster that was rotting out from the inside and decided to pull out the guts of it. It's just too bad for the quarterback that was already there. And it was a
Mhm.
shame before 22 ever happened, right?
Yep. Yep.
And
Well,
then
but people say that about Flus right now. They say he's lame duck, Robert.
I know. And I'm telling you that the Bears are not obligated to report contract extensions. They're not. What drives contract extension reports? The agent wants you to know when a player gets extended because they want a new client, Nick. The coaches get different agents.
Yep.
Those guys don't need you to know in many
Mhm.
cases. Not only are Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus on their 3rd year, not their 4th, right? They have 2 more years on their contract. But if they were already extended, I would not be surprised, and the Bears would not be obligated to tell us. And so I'm really surprised at how many people think that this is playoffs or bust, right? Playoffs, which could mean anything. I mean, if Montez Sweat dislocates his shoulder and ends up not playing for 7 games and then not the same for another 6, and also Jalen Johnson misses major time, maybe he needs a shoulder surgery, RIP, right? And then
Mhm.
Tyreek has to play major minutes at corner 1. Keenan Allen tweaks his ankle. He is up and down all season long. So now you're rocking with DJ Moore, a rookie, and a defense that doesn't have the pass rush you hoped it would. Nobody would be shocked if that team only won 7 games. And as long
Right.
as Caleb Williams looked good in them, nobody's getting fired.
Yep.
Like, that's my point, is
Mhm.
the Bears shouldn't win 7 games because Caleb's bad and therefore they only win 7 games and then everybody stays. That's not how this is going to work. It's more like there's probably going to be decent reasons for why the Bears only win 7 games if they only win 7 games. And if Caleb looks like the future during those 7 games, I'm going to tell you right now, Bears fan, nobody's going anywhere at
Nope.
that point. Nobody's
Nope.
going anywhere.
Mm-mm. And Poles talked on Flus, and it was a question I think about like supporting your young quarterback, and he decided he's like, well, the first thing is like Flus does an amazing job building relationships. You know your head coach has your back, and then he talks about creating a structure to set up a young quarterback for success, and so on one hand, I want to just go back. Assistant coaches get 3-year contracts, y'all. Okay. And that's part of why Cliff Kingsbury didn't stay where he was, or I can't remember. It was a Kingsbury. Some assistant left a job they thought they were going to take because they didn't offer him a 3-year deal. So I think it would make sense for me that Flus and Poles got extended by at least 1 year to get the timeline with all of the assistants they just hired to be there for 3 years. That
I
would make sense
agree.
to me.
Why
And
would you hire all these assistants, the best offensive coordinator on the
like,
market,
Thomas
just
Brown,
just to eat his salary for
right?
2 more years afterwards?
Yeah,
It's not going to
that
happen.
doesn't make sense. But then he said he went into setting up a young quarterback for success. Okay. So in Robert's scenario, right? Bunch of people get hurt, right? As long as Caleb looks good and makes development purposes, no one's going to get fired. This is exactly why. And I brought up this on Twitter not long ago. I said what the Bears are going to do at 109. If they go receiver, okay, it helps the quarterback more. If they go defense, like let's say Caleb Williams doesn't look very good, Robert. Okay, let's say it
Can you
just
give me
didn't
a
come
player comp?
together.
Baker?
Baker, sure, yeah, or
But like what year? Because Baker was actually okay as a rookie.
he
That's one
was
of the
okay as
things
a
I'm really
rookie.
struggling with here,
Yeah.
Nick.
But
If you
hold on, stay with me here. So let's say he struggles somewhat and he has fine. Let's go. I mean, you could do the passing part of it, and extrapolate it. But let's say Justin Fields' his best year as a passer, right? So let's say like mid to high 80s quarterback rating, right? Which isn't elite, right? You're not really good. It's below average. And you're like, I don't know. But you added a D end and the defense looks really good. And the Bears win 8 games. Are people pumped versus the Bears win 8 games? The defense doesn't look as good. It was a mirage the last half of the year, but you loaded up another receiver and Caleb throws for 4,000 yards. Okay. Sets the Bears record because he's got 3 guys that are awesome. He's got Komet and he's thrown everywhere. Even though the Bears aren't winning, maybe they didn't make the playoffs, but he looks awesome. Which season looks better to you, Robert?
I mean, probably both, I guess. But I'm going to go with the latter one because that's my bent. And you know that, right? Like,
That's
I
where I feel too, though.
I can understand where if the Bears drafted, so let's say that the Dallas Turner falls to the Bears, right? Draft goes, because you say this, but this could totally happen, right? Where the Bears go, or the draft goes quarterback, Marvin Harrison, quarterback. So now we're at 5,
Mhm.
and Minnesota traded up to go get that number 5th pick,
Yeah.
and then 6th pick you get a wide receiver, 7th pick you get alt, 8th pick you also get an offensive lineman like Fuaga or like Latham or something like that, and
Yeah.
Dallas Turner falls to the
Kashanu.
Bears.
Yep.
And so the Bears take Dallas Turner, right? And Dallas Turner turns into a 12 sack a year guy, which I think is his literal ceiling. Like, I don't know if it's going to get any higher than that, but he looks like a monster, Nick,
Yeah.
a monster, a
Yeah.
problem. At that point, if Caleb does look like a Kyler Murray level quarterback, like
Mhm.
a fringe top 10, but eyes to the future, if we can get a little bit better than that, then I do think people would be equally excited. It would just be way cooler if he threw for 4,000 yards in his rookie
Mhm.
year. And to your point, look, man, this goes both ways. This is good Keenan Allen. This is bad Keenan Allen. Good Keenan Allen. How could you not? How could you pass up the opportunity to get Roma Dunze or Malik Nabers coached by Keenan Allen? You want to talk about the ideal position coach for a rookie superstar? You get a guy like him and a teammate like DJ Moore to just sponge into that player, especially if you somehow get Rome out of it. I think Rome would be.
And let Keenan live in the slot, which
I
is
know.
where he does his best work.
I think Rome would be the perfect player to learn from Keenan
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
But also, Nick, what is synonymous with Keenan Allen seasons? Injury.
Yep.
It is a near every year thing. So doesn't it behoove you to plan for weeks without Keenan Allen? And if you're planning for weeks without Keenan Allen, do you really want to rock out with DJ Moore and Ricky Pearsall, who I like, or
I like
Javon
him too.
Baker, who I like, or Xavier Leggett, who is fine once you get him in the 3rd round? That's okay. That's pretty much 2023.
Right.
So
Malachi Corley, yeah.
could be worse. But Nick, what if you could instead? Oh, Keenan's hurt? Damn shame. I guess we'll just have to rock with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze.
Well, and because we talked about this, what if Keenan Allen isn't back in 2025? Now what's the plan when you don't have a top 10 pick and you're trying to overpay to get a Gabe Davis-like guy to be wide receiver?
You got no leverage either. The moment that you don't have a pick like that, Keenan Allen's agent can say, I just caught for 1,200 yards in 13 games. You're telling me I'm you're telling me I'm overpaid? I'm underpaid. Justin Jefferson's asking for $30+ million. And you think 23 is too much? Get the wallet out. And then you draft another receiver and you're offering Keenan Allen a bed to end his career on. You're saying, this could be so easy for you. Come play for a sweet team. You played in LA and San Diego. You know you haven't gone to the playoffs. Why would you go anywhere else?
Yeah.
And I think it's a different argument. And in the wide world of, because Nick, that's the other thing. I do think, okay, so I know you know this. It is a real misconception out there that free agents just go for the money. They do not just go for the money. There is no way Juju Smith-Schuster only had 1-year deals. He just went to Kansas City because he knew what playing with Mahomes does. There's no way Marquez Valdez-Scantling only got offered what he did from Kansas City. No way. That guy just wanted to go play for Mahomes. So you got to make the argument to Keenan that he wants to be here. I actually think
there are some guys that just want the money. But
there's some.
But to me, like, I mean, we even think that. Like, we're even like, dude, I would go and do this. Even if, like, we could even, people do that with their careers right now. They could go somewhere. Sure. It's a startup. It's a risk. Or I could go to this solid company that's got good benefits, but I know it's going to make me better and whatever. The other part of this too, Robert, is I see people pushing back on getting a receiver because they're like, well, there's not enough footballs to go around. I don't care about fantasy football. I don't think they do either. If you win, you go to the playoffs. DJ Moore, I don't think he's ever been there. Keenan Allen, it's been a while. Rome Odunze would be a rookie. Cole Kmet wants to get there. We want all this. Like, if you do that, even if you extend Keenan by a year or whatever, and he's like, hey, I'm going to end my career as a slot guy, and I know my role, but now I know the offense in Chicago.
Right.
Like, give him a Mike Evans deal. Rome's on the rookie deal. Caleb's on the rookie deal. You have the money to do it. Like, it could be amazing.
And the other thing, Nick, is, and I think a lot of fans forget this, I think, but that's not to wave the finger. It's more to say it's hard to think like this. Nick, what are you and I thinking about? Well, like next week. But beyond that, we're thinking about the 2024 football season. Why would we think about 2025? It is literally Ryan Pohl's job to think about 2025, 2026. And right now, Keenan Allen's not on those teams. You don't even know if DJ Moore is going to be on the 2026 team. You don't know. You hope, but you don't know. And at that point, DJ is going to start pushing 30. DJ, I love him, is not the world's most technical receiver. There's going to be a time where the clock strikes midnight, and I believe DJ Moore will lose that step, and it will be gone. And you will say, what an amazing career, DJ. What an amazing career. But it's over, if that makes sense. I mean, that's the brutal end for most receivers. That wouldn't be weird, right? Mm-hmm. And so receiver, through that lens, makes a lot more sense. And so does, not that I thought I would say it, Nick, because Ryan Pohl's mentioned it, but through that lens, when we look at 2025 and 2026, maybe offensive tackle does make more sense than we think it does. I mean, look, I love Braxton Jones. If you know me at all, you know that I think Braxton Jones is one of the best values in the NFL. But on the football field, cap space and value does not help you win the game. And
No.
when you do watch Braxton Jones, again, I love him, but against tier 1 edge rushers, against guys like Danielle Hunter, against guys that are Preston Smith level good, Braxton's fighting for his life. And now he loses with dignity more often than he just gets pantsed. I mean, Lucas Patrick L's are like double L's. They're instant major pressure, whereas Braxton stuff can be avoided. But Nick, if you told me the Bears valued the opportunity to take a sick offensive tackle that flat out should not be there, because I think you and I would agree, in most drafts, a Joe Alt should not get to 9.
No.
But if he does in this draft, it will purely be because 4 quarterbacks in a rookie wage scale that is beating the snot out of teams in the league right now. There really isn't an option outside of take the rookie. So you got those guys. You've got at least one defender in Dallas Turner that's catching people's eyes. You got 3 receivers that are catching people's eyes. If a Joe Alt, if an Olufashano will almost assuredly be there. Maybe J.C. Latham has their attention. If they do take an offensive tackle, it will not be my first choice, but I don't even hate that. I mean, we're at the point where I really don't hate any of their options.
Well, yeah, I get that. So Poles' presser today gave a few clues, little sprinkles, he's leaving some crumbs for Hansel and Gretel to follow. So I'll take you down that road here.
Take me down that road.
So one thing he said is interior O-line, talking about like Ryan Bates, getting Shelton. He said the interior O-line has really, word for word, bothered him for a long time. He said it stresses you out when you don't have flexibility. And now versatility. He says now they have versatility and competition. And when he says, he's like, well, from here, we're going to go through different scenarios with his guys, his scouting guys and whatever. He says, one will take the offensive tackles and one will take the wide receivers and one will take the DNs and go through these scenarios. He said offensive tackle first. And me and you have talked about this, Robert, where we both like Braxton Jones. You like Tyreek Stevenson more than I do, but I still like him. We think taking one of those at 9 doesn't make sense because it's like, well, you already have a guy. This would be a better guy, but it doesn't make quite as much sense. He referenced it in the press conference, offensive tackle. So you're like, oh, maybe they're not as high on Braxton Jones, or they see a scenario where one of those guys gets there. So I think it is more open, but also, as you talked about, creating that structure, because the one thing that hurt Fields was pressure. The one thing that hurt Caleb Williams last year was his offensive line was really bad, besides the receivers, but like that hurt him too. Having that like bookends and better versatility interior O-line helps tremendously too.
We're going to go athletic football show here a little bit because I'm going to bring up a lot of things from around the NFL. So Bears fan, if you really only follow the Bears, just hang on with me, okay? The biggest problem I have with talking about offensive tackle here, Nick, isn't the value. Like the positional value for offensive tackle at 9 makes a lot of sense. Darnell Wright is still one of my favorite Bears draft picks of the last couple years because not only is he an ass kicker on the field, but he's the kind of guy that you need to pick when you're there because it's just really hard to find quality offensive tackle play outside of the top half of the first round. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, Nick, but it's pretty much true. Like the best you're looking for from about pick 26 down is Braxton, who you got in the 5th. And that's pretty normal across the league. It's hard to find studs outside of there. So the biggest problem I have is that if I was Jacksonville, I'd be so into this. If I was, I don't think Houston's worried about Tunsil retiring anytime soon. But the point being, like, bounce around the league, think about young quarterbacks playing with ratty tackles, right? Like just bad tackle play. Oh, the Chargers. I would be really interested, and I wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh's thinking about it. I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, they got Rashawn Slater's good. That's one.
They have one.
The other one.
The other one isn't good. And you can't, I mean, Nick, you come from an air raid certified background. Let me just spoil part of the stew for everybody that's in here. You can't play empty with bad tackles. You are going to die back there. Yep. If you try to run most of the passing plays that you're going to try to bring in from college background Caleb into the NFL, if you don't have tackles you can trust. The problem here, Nick, is that it's not the tackles that got their butts kicked last year in Bears uniforms. It was the interior. And in particular, it was Nate Davis who had the worst year of his life on the field and off the field.
Yep.
It was two centers that aren't on the team anymore. And it wasn't Tevin Jenkins. I mean, he had his moments, but he had way more good moments than bad. So does Alt help you fix the interior? I mean, literally, he does not. I mean, I don't think. Yeah.
You know, a weird thing that I don't like about Alt
is it that he's too tall?
Yeah, if Caleb's 6'1", having his 6'8", 6'9" tackle doesn't make sense to me.
I also think that there's a leverage perspective. Like, it's awesome that he has really long arms, but I find it hard to believe that somebody that mountainous can drop his weight. And I'm not surprised that he has small anchor issues, like lowercase a anchor issues on his tape. And I do think that that's an aspect of his game that shorter guys like Aiden Hutchinson, like Khalil Mack, like, I mean, all the good edge rushers are going to be able to convert speed to power and at least give him some problems. But that's life in the NFL. Edge rushers are amazing. The greater point that I think both of us are I'm trying to explain is if there was some kind of one pick that could, if I could just do this ultimate team style and just add a player that was an automatic 95 overall and he was going to play center, then yeah, I'm literally interested in Jackson Powers Johnson at number 9. But that's not real life. This is still a gamble. It's still a dice roll. And just because you picked him high doesn't make him good. So you have to prioritize positional value, because I'll tell you where you won't get a sweet edge rusher is at 75. Not like you would at 12 or 9 or 15.
Same as receiver, but people go down that road. What's interesting about this is Poles talked about it. He was like, I really like how the talent stacks up for 9. And people are like, well, you still could train. It's like, well, we still will look at our board and whatnot. And then he talked about how the draft, because he traded the later round picks, y'all. He talked about how he likes how the draft matches up. Because he's like, if you look at how many picks we've had the past few years, we're over 8 per year. And then next year, we have a lot more draft picks and how that matches up too. It makes me wonder if he doesn't trade down here. And I'm with you, like adding a great player. I do want to get into something I think that might be a little touchy though, Robert.
Uh-oh.
I know you know this, but whatever, some people. So in my mind, going through other teams and how this could play out, I feel like the Giants, if they picked receiver between Odunze or Nabers, Odunze makes more sense because Jalen Hyatt's not tall, Wandale Robinson's not tall. Like all their guys aren't tall, and Darren Waller might retire apparently. Rome Odunze makes more sense there, okay? If Malik Nabers falls to 9, there's a little asterisk in his background, right?
It's the only demerit. It's the only demerit among the top 3.
Well, he's got a few things on film I would like to be better, but there was a thing here, y'all. I don't know if you guys know, a misdemeanor arrest that he did not get charged for. It got dropped about carrying an illegal weapon down Bourbon Street. I'm reading it right now. This is 2023 February. And he had an L-shaped object in his pocket. And I don't know what happened. It got dismissed, which he's a football player.
He's a football player. That's what I was about to say.
Louisiana.
What, you think they're going to send an LSU Tiger to jail?
Right. But he had it. Like, it's not like a thing. Like there was a gun. And so knowing what we knew about Jalen Carter last year, y'all, best talent in the draft.
Hang on. I want to just point out those are very different. Like
they are different, but it's still something. And I know
it is.
George Pickens rubbed Poles the wrong way. I think he was on the draft board apparently. Like, and I don't know. Do you think Nabers is off the draft board? I guess is my question.
I don't think we're gonna know. I think it is fair to speculate whether he's on their draft board, but for us to make a claim is to pretend we know Malik. And
I don't know.
Like that's not me coming after you, Nick. That's me saying, like, I think there is a very clear box we can talk into where it's like there's not a lot of people that know that there's speculation about whether Malik Nabers left willingly for his senior year of high school or whether he was kicked out of his other school. I don't know the whole story.
I didn't know that.
We're not going to know the whole story. Like it's just, you see it all over the place. The point is, I'm not trying to buy into the rumor mill because it's really not about that. It's more about this idea, Nick, of George Pickens wasn't on their draft board. George Pickens boasted about making a blatant business decision in the end zone of a key game against the Colts. So maybe Ryan Poles saw some of this coming. Like even Mike Tomlin, who has kept the pressure cooker lid on top of some wild personalities. Like, think about this, man. Chase Claypool is my favorite example. The biggest naysayer in the world would never have predicted that Chase Claypool wouldn't crack, I think it is 200 total yards since the moment he left Pittsburgh. And if it's not literally 200, it's close. So Deontay Johnson being given away, Chase Claypool like ending up reaping a decent return, Antonio Brown obviously going down the train that he did.
Yeah,
Mike
sadly.
Tomlin's amazing at this, and George Pickens is pushing that boundary.
Mm.
Jalen Carter was amazing early in last year's season, and then he apparently threatened a man's life on
Right.
like during one of the games. That's all over social media. Believe
Oh,
what
wait,
you want.
he said that?
One of the Broncos linemen, I think it was
Oh, I
like,
didn't know that.
it's look, trash talk on a football field, I assume, is much less clean than fans would like to imagine it is. And I think we all kind of know that. But the point I'm getting at here, Nick, is this is one of those like I trust polls moments. It's a phrase I try not to use a lot, but I tend to think that Nabers' explosiveness and what he can bring to nearly any offense in football is going to be something people are going to covet. If the Bears don't want him, somebody's probably trading up with the Bears to come get him.
Right.
But
I just think, Robert, it's something like, this is a Bears podcast, like people to keep in mind, because it's something polls values. And I don't know, maybe this wasn't a thing. I mean, the article from ESPN sounds like it was a thing, like he had something in his pocket that was
it was a thing. It's just a matter of whether he grew from it or a mark of where he is right now. Does that make sense?
No,
Because
that's fair.
and that's the kind of thing that you're gonna just assess in the interviews that you and I won't get access to. I mean,
No.
if
But
we what did you call it, Nick? Like if we gave everybody a label based on the worst thing that they did between when they were 22 and younger, we would all wear different labels than we walk around with today. So
for sure. And the other thing that's interesting too, like thinking about like what's at 9, I just want to bring this up, is I have the top 30 visits, at least the ones that we know right now for Chicago. And Caleb's one of them. He did talk in the press.
They're bringing in Caleb Williams? What?
Stop. They did say they were going to go to LSU after this. And I know some people are thinking like looking at Jane Daniels. To me, I think it's to look at the receivers and talk to those guys.
It could be all of them.
But they're not on the list. So top 30 visits that we know of is Caleb Williams, Dallas Turner, the tackle from Yale. I'm just going to say because I can't pronounce his last name. Dylan Lobby, the running back. Zach Frazier, center, West Virginia. Brock Bowers, obviously tight end, Georgia. And the other one's interesting is Nehemiah Pritchard, who is super athletic corner. Super athletic. So I just thought it was kind of interesting to have him there. But, again, we're all just speculating. There's a lot of things of like, okay, what position do they go for? Whatever. But there, I mean, like right there, Brock Bowers is there. Is he available at 9 now? Is that I'm like, who knows, man?
I still think that right now the Bears truly don't know what they're doing at 9. I don't think they have to. Not only do they literally not have an idea, Nick, we could do all this talk and then 3 quarterbacks could go top 8 and only 3. I mean, if you told me that Jaden Daniels would fall to 9 after all this, I would believe you. JJ McCarthy seems like he's rising up draft boards, which we shouldn't be shocked about. Not only can the guy throw seeds over the middle, but he's 20 and he's exactly the kind of guy that football coaches are going to freak out about. Maybe it's Drake May that falls. We don't know. And that's the point. So if the Bears do trade down from where they are to 15 and they pick up Brock Bowers at like 12, 15, okay, it's not what I would have done, but it doesn't mean it's not sweet and interesting. The Bears may also not covet their picks. The Bears may think that this is just not the year to have a billion rookies, and instead that it's better to have all kinds of veterans surrounding the young quarterback, just like you talked about. But it's funny because I start reading through this list you're mentioning. It's like, oh, Laube. So they're thinking about him after a trade down in the 4th. Oh, Pritchett. So they're thinking about him after a trade down in the 4th. Oh, Kieran, what is it? Is it like Amigdai or something like that?
Yeah. And he, second round.
That's a target around 75. That's if he falls, we're definitely interested. Zach Frazier, another guy that they'd be targeting nearer to 75. You can almost see that they are. I mean, they're not going to talk to Keon. I would love it if they did, right? But they're not going to bring in a guy that is a square second rounder. Or maybe he's a late first rounder. They don't need to talk to Lad McConkey,
If you don't have a pick in there, yeah, it doesn't make sense.
which who knows? Maybe they talk to some of these guys at the Senior Bowl. Like
Did
maybe they don't
well,
need a top 30 visit for that reason. But
so if they're not on this list though, does that mean they're not trading down from 9?
who's they in this case? Like,
Chicago.
oh, I gotcha.
If you don't have Brian Thomas, well, I guess they could talk to him when they go to LSU, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't have that group.
That's the other thing, man, right? We make top 30 visits something that they're not. Sometimes we make it, oh, these are their priority guys. Sometimes it's they thought they just needed more time with him than they needed with him, where they
Mhm,
thought his film is obvious. Then they went and talked with him. They had dinner with the guy and they went, okay, so it's obvious. And maybe their agent got him in touch with their dad because, that's not tampering. Uh, and they had a long enough conversation with their dad that they were like, they're cool. Okay, we know
mhm.
them. But who's to say, Nick? I'm interested. I know you're interested. And I can't help but think that the Bears options at 9 are outrageously fun.
Yep.
It's so much better if I could just say this. I know we've talked about this a lot, but now that we're here, right? The Bears having number 9 is so much more fun than just having number 1. Like, obviously, 2 top 10 draft picks is its own
Mhm.
exciting prospect. But the fact that the Bears we don't feel stuck at quarterback, where we're hoping that this player is the reason the Bears reach new heights. But we also aren't just drafting Caleb Williams and hoping this is enough and saying, gee, I hope Keenan can stay healthy. Do we need to draft another receiver at 75 just to keep him upright? You know what I'm saying? Like, instead, you get this other potential blue chipper, Nick. 5th best position player in the draft is going to be there at 9.
I All right, so here, just to test your memory here, Robert. The
Ready?
last time the Bears had picked 9 or earlier, who did they draft?
Don't know, right?
No, because he went 10.
I know, but I was being cheeky with you
I
because
know. Have fun here, let's see how this is.
Okay, so let's go through this. All right, so 2022 was Darnell Wright. He was drafted at 10th. And then 2021, they didn't have a first rounder. That
Mhm.
was Kayvon Thibodeau. I think it was. Because I'm pretty sure the Giants was 5th and they
Yeah,
took
yeah.
Evan Neal with
Yep.
theirs and then the Bears drafted or then Bears pick went to Thibodeau. The year before that was Justin Fields. He was at
Yep.
number 11. Should have been number 20 something, but the Bears traded
Mhm.
off of that. The year before that, they drafted. So what I'm working backwards from is the Bears drafted Kevin White in the top 10. And then they
No, that
drafted
was that was
Mitch.
that was that was 2015.
That was
He was the
2015.
7th pick.
Then they
Yep.
drafted Mitch Trubisky in top
There there
2.
there's a guy between there.
I bet there is. And then Kyle Fuller was not top 10, right?
No, he was 2014, he was pick 14.
He was 14. And then let me see who was after Mitch. Nobody was after Mitch. They just traded from Mac. Now I'm
Nope,
remembering
there's
that.
the guy. This is the guy
This is the guy?
you're missing, yep.
What? Wait, so 2018?
2018,
They had a first rounder in 2018? They
8th
did.
overall.
Oh, it was Smith. Roquan.
Roquan's the last top 9 pick that they had. It was Roquan. Mitch was before that. The one you missed between Kevin White and Mitch was Leonard Floyd.
Legendary at 5? Because it's funny. I'm sitting here looking at this, at thinking about that list, Nick, and I'm like, oh, yeah, it would be the Bears to draft an inside backer. Like, call me a hater, right? Because
Yep.
Roquan's an amazing
And
player.
well, the thing that's interesting is, like, you wanna get this guy at 9 that can be an impact player, and you look at, like, Kevin White's sad because he got hurt a bunch, you know?
Rip.
Leonard Floyd, it didn't work in Chicago, but he's been pretty solid elsewhere, and Roquan's been pretty darn good. Like, you can get a guy like that, but the thing is, I think I want to kinda touch on is, like, no matter who they take at 9, there's some good players in this draft at 9 that'll be available. You look from Cedric Benson was the last one before that at pick 4. Between there and, let's see, Kevin White was 2015. There's so many years in between there because the Bears were good. Like, we talked about this. If the Bears were 8.5 wins, y'all, or better, and it's kind of in that, even in the middling range to good range, they're not going to be in this top 10 again. Like, this pick 9 is like our last shot at getting that Jamar Chase, Joe Alt, whatever level talent that you want, because we're not going to get them later.
People have called me a dreamer for saying this for the better part of a year, Nick. But I think you've heard me say it before. that I keep making the joke that isn't a joke that my son, now 18 months old, may start to cheer for football in an age where the Bears are good and never realize through his young life that they were ever this bad.
Yep.
Because I think Ryan Poles has built this. This is my favorite part, Nick. Do the Bears need to hit on every pick? Well, they used to, right? They used to need to nail that third. Think about the 2019 draft. We need to nail that third round pick because we don't have a second rounder. We don't have a first rounder. So we better nail it because this is all we got. And
Yep.
so 2018, we need to nail this because we're pushing our championship window. 2020, well, 2019 went really badly. So we need to nail this so that we can get back on the horse. 2021, I don't know how we're going to do it, but we need to find a quarterback. Oh my God, we got one. 2022, well, we don't have a first rounder again. So we need to nail this second rounder, both of these second rounders. And the funny part is you look at a guy like Kyler Gordon, you look at a guy like Jaquan Brisker. Nick, I think both of them are good players. I think both of them play a role on your football field.
Mhm.
Neither are home runs. That's the draft. That
Yes.
a lot of these teams are built through Mecole Hardman's, which that's a bad second rounder, but he helped them win a Super Bowl twice. You could argue he tried to hurt them winning a Super Bowl in this last one, but we'll leave that aside. The point being, Nick, the Bears are entering their one draft away in 2024, away from a 2025, where if they get a single out of their first rounder and they really hammer a triple on Carolina's second rounder, and then they flat miss their own second rounder, and then they go to the third round and they had a single, and then they get to the fourth round, they had a double for a fourth rounder, and then they miss on the fifth rounder, and then they get the Fields pick, and that one's okay, etc., etc. You will build a deep team just with shots at the lottery and a solid core of players that is actually young. Last time the Bears had an offense this exciting, the defense was aging. We were saying to ourselves, I don't know how many years Urlacher's got in the tank left, but hopefully there's at least a couple in there because Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte, Martellus Bennett is only going to happen once. Oh, and Earl Bennett too, if you wanted to include him, which I do. Love you, Earl. Anyways, all this to say, Nick, because I'll make this my closing thought, I guess, that it won't shock me if the Bears are looking at this year as a year to load up on quantity over quality in the knowledge that they have, or quality over quantity, I said it backwards, knowing that they have the quantity coming up later. That when they get to the point where they never draft this high again, they need to take advantage of it now. And I think you do that focusing on impact positions. Can you find a receiver later? Sure. Will you find a Rome Odunze later? Probably not. So you got to think about it. You got to think about edge. You got to think about offensive tackle. I don't think you have to think about Quinyon Mitchell, but I know you're thinking about Quinyon Mitchell. I think that's hasty, but that's just me. But anyways, I'm so stoked about where this Bears team is going.
I don't know how people can. Like I see some people, they're still like,
they're still mad.
Negative. Like, what are you mad at? Like this is, I mean, again, not per our Bears lens, per other people, you get a generational guy to come in with an offensive line. This is the best O-line the Bears have had since holy buckets. The Super Bowl era team.
This is the least confident I've seen Packers fans that they're going to just categorically dominate the Bears.
I mean, like you have that, and then like Flus's defenses, y'all, they didn't have to have great edges. Like they just did it. But now he's got at least a solid D line. We like the rest of the whole setup. We've already talked through all that. Like we are ready to roll. And it's not just like 2025, 2026, like 2024 could be a solid year too. I know that not many rookie quarterbacks make the playoffs or win a game. We get that. But that's because they're not set up for it. We are set up for it. Like we should be excited. And like I'm sad about Justin too, y'all. I'm sad. But I'm excited that the Bears are going to win because I'm a Bears fan first.
So Nick, you did a bunch of research just a couple months ago about the impact of having 2 first-round picks. That if you have 2 first-round picks, you tend to make the playoffs. And if you don't have a first-round pick, you tend to not make the playoffs, right? And it's funny because when you think about it, what is picking a quarterback in the first round? Well, it's the equivalent of not having a first-round pick. Because generally, the quarterback is one of the rare positions on the football field that you just sort of assume you have one there because you don't have another option, right? That is the quarterback. If we've got to run the veer for Tim Tebow, I guess we're running the veer. But that doesn't mean that we aren't going to build everything around the quarterback. We have to. So it's funny, Nick, because that means that the rookie quarterbacks don't make the playoffs thing is a form of survivorship bias because you're looking at all the teams that didn't have a first round pick to add along with
Yeah.
the rookie quarterback.
Yep.
When
Yep.
you look at Russell Wilson, what's the difference between his situation and Trevor Lawrence's? Well, the Seahawks had a first round pick because they picked Russ in the third. Or
Yep.
Dak Prescott. Well, the Dallas Cowboys had a first round pick because they took Dak Prescott in the fourth. With the Bears, they have a second one. They have a very normal, good first round pick after taking the number one overall. This is an incredibly unique situation. I mean, historically speaking, I just don't know if there's going to be one like it
Right.
that's there for comparison. And so it puts us in position, Nick, where if we say we're already out of historical bounds, well, then what do you predict? Something in historical bounds? We just said we're out of historical bounds.
Right.
So, like
Well,
logic and reason. What?
well, well, remember you were like, uh, at one point, you were frustrated. I remember this. You were talking about the Fields versus, Caleb debate. And you were like, I want the Bears to do something they've never done before. And I came back, I'm like, they've never drafted a quarterback 101. Like no matter what they pick or trade back and have multiple first round picks, 3 years in a row, they've never done that either. Like no matter what they picked was going to be new for Chicago,
Mhm.
but also like this is going to be different because quarterbacks aren't set up for success. CJ Stroud last year, y'all, they hit a home run by getting Tank Dell in round 3. Imagine if they didn't get that, right? Like and they had Will Anderson. Those two they rode, but the rest of that team was not set up like Chicago is right now. It took those two guys, and they're like, "Yep, we're going to get to the playoffs and we're going to do something." Like the Bears don't even have to get that lucky with like a Tank Dell type. They just have to like hit, like you said, if they hit a double with Caleb and they hit a double with the 9th pick with the rest of the team, it's better than what Houston had last year.
And sheesh, man. I mean, like, I know that Caleb could easily come into the league. He could throw 12 interceptions, which is high now. Like, you look at it's so funny, right? Because you look at history, and I'm pretty sure Eli Manning had a 20 plus interception season. I think he had more than one. And so then you get to the NFL, and now throwing 11 interceptions is considered pretty ghastly. Like, quarterback play's gotten good, everybody.
Mhm.
But so
Mhm.
Caleb could easily throw 12 interceptions and then fumble the ball 15 times, get it back another, let's say, 8. So he loses 7 fumbles, and that's actually be pretty decent fumble luck in his case, right?
Mhm.
And in that, Nick, you could easily have a couple moments where Caleb is pretty much imitating Tyson Bagent for like 80% of the game. And then he has, what do you think, 3 to 4 plays per game where he just dances around, goes, or like just runs for his life. And then
Big time throws,
I was even
BTT.
just going to say he'll have a moment because this to me is the essence of Aaron Rodgers, right? It was sitting in the pocket fearlessly for so long that the coverage gets really spread out. The integrity of cover 2, cover 3, cover 4 is just kind of haywire the moment that 2 guys ran deep, one of them off of scramble drill. And then suddenly, Nick, there's DJ Moore or there's Malachi Corley just sitting on his hitch like 6 yards off the ball. He's not far. It's not a hard throw. But he turns around. This Bears fan, if you're thinking about the play I'm literally describing, it's Randall Cobb running for 80 yards in 2019's week 1 opener in a game I will never forget, though I wish I could. Like those plays, Nick, where the guy turns around and Caleb picks up 65 free yards
Yep.
off of
Yep.
the receiver's effort, but you're wondering where anybody on defense even is because he held on to the ball for so long
Yep.
that the defense literally isn't there. They covered everybody who was a
Well,
threat.
because and honestly, like this is without getting super in depth on this, because I have a whole thing. Honestly, I don't really want to share a lot of it, Robert. I have a secret offense, Robert.
Oh,
Okay,
a
secret.
secret
I, I
offense.
I'm serious. I have sat on an idea for over a decade that I've never seen someone do, but I'm not going to introduce it today. I'm not going to spoil it. I'm going to keep that for me because if I get a head coaching job, it's going to be lights out. But anyways, the thing is defenses are designed to stop coverages, are designed to stop wide receiver routes, combinations. They study all this stuff for 45 seconds. That's it. That's when Big Ben was hanging in the pocket for a long time. Aaron Rodgers was buying time. Johnny Manziel in college. Like you can go down the list. When you can buy time, big plays happen more often than when you throw in structure. And that's what this is.
It is. And you get a couple of those. You add a couple 45, 35-yard chunks to a 200-yard game, and you end up with 300 yards pretty quick, at least now and again. Look, man, I don't know. I don't know. I feel crazy. I feel like I'm committing a cardinal sin, suggesting that the Bears have a rookie quarterback that might etch his name into Bears season history if he plays 17 games. Pretty big if.
Oh, yeah.
It's cheating too, because you're going up against 16-game season records. But
I get it.
The Bears are also the only franchise that doesn't have a 4,000-yard passer. Our record book is just weaker than everybody else's.
I don't even think it's looking optimistic to think it could even happen this year, because it could.
It's reasonable. It's not pie in the sky. And that's what's wild about it. All right, we got to wrap this show up. We did the usual thing where we said, this will be a nice short, like bite-sized podcast, and it's been an hour and 15 minutes. So Nick, what you got coming up? So if you're not going to share with us your secret offense, what are you going to share us with?
Yeah. Well, hey man, I'm going to be out of pocket for a little bit here. I have a wedding shower. I don't know what happens at those things, Robert, but I have to go. So
you get a bunch of stuff.
Yeah. So I mean,
Congrats.
I guess I'll be doing that stuff this weekend. So yeah, hopefully there's not a lot of new Bear news, but besides that, I read an article. It's going to go in our state high school football publication. I'm finishing that up. And some other things. So yeah, it's still fun. There's still things going on, and dude, I daily am excited about the Bears. So I hope Bears fans are too.
I am too. I mean, I think it's funny because the air on Bears Twitter is still a little more combative than I think it ought to be. But I don't know. What I'm sitting here thinking, guys, is don't let expectations steal your joy. If you're somebody who wants to set the bar and then is going to be disappointed if Caleb doesn't hit it, set a very achievable rookie quarterback goal to hit, because 35, 36, 3,700 yards can still turn out a very, very good pro. It doesn't have to be CJ Stroud's numbers or we riot, right? Especially because I think the Bears have set up a quarterback environment where Caleb, who owes nothing to nobody, Caleb doesn't owe anything to Justin Fields, that he can develop at his own pace. And if he ends up being the first Bears passer to break 4,000 yards, and he only ever throws 4,400 yards in his best season ever, I'm just refuse to be disappointed by this. You know what I'm saying, Nick? Like, I think that Caleb Williams has the opportunity to reach for the stars here. I think Caleb Williams could be a 5,000-yard passer. And Bears fan, when I say that, I really mean it. But I don't want to expect it. That seems astronomical and frankly insane to expect from a guy who hasn't even drafted the Bears yet.
Well, okay, real quick. This would be my last thing, and then we do probably have to go, because if you hung with us, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate y'all. How about this? How many passers threw for 3,850 yards last year? How many quarterbacks?
17. And if
14.
not, it's because of injury.
14. Yeah, well, that's a key part too, because then you have to think about how many players actually played 17 games. So, like Bryce Young had a bad year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we won't count him. Minshew in 17 games threw for 3,300 yards.
And if you, by the way, so he played in 17 games, but he did not start 17 games.
No, but
if you go back and you look at Minshew's last 17 starts, guess how many yards he's thrown for?
How many?
4,100. Like
that's the thing. Like, this is so doable, y'all.
It's so doable.
It is, and I know pass attempts matter. You know what I mean? Like, because you could, like, Sam Howell threw for 3,900, but he had over 100 more attempts than like Stroud, and like Purdy. Brock Purdy had so few pass attempts, and he had almost 4,300 passing yards.
Purdy also has just been playing sick ball. Like, I'm not going to try to stand too hard for a guy that has nothing and no relevance to the Bears. Look, we all love the 49ers. Who doesn't love the 49ers? But the only time I'm going to care about Brock Purdy's scouting report is when the Bears square him up in the NFC Championship game. Like, that's
so. Robert,
we play them. We play them this next year.
Yeah, we play them.
Never mind.
Well, Brock Purdy had 153 less attempts than Patrick Mahomes, and threw for almost 100 more yards than him.
Their yard, the Chiefs in particular, had such a hard time generating explosives
Yep.
That doesn't surprise
I
me at
know, but
all.
it's just like I'm just telling you all, like, and he doesn't have to have the Brock, or he doesn't have to have this 49ers supporting cast around him, like whatever. Like you can even go down to Baker. Baker threw for 4,000 last year. Stafford in 15 games almost threw for 4,000. Trevor Lawrence and all the struggles they had threw for 4,000. Like
Jordan
this is doable.
Love, who Nick says did nothing ever and it was all easy. He threw for 4,000.
Yeah,
Like it's there's a lot of ways to skin the 4,000-yard cat. And
dude, and now go back to the schedule. The teams aren't overly difficult. We talked about the 11 teams that are at Chicago's level or worse.
Nick,
11 of them.
there's a quarterback I'm thinking of that he went number 1 overall, right? His supporting cast actually wasn't pretty bad. He had a sweet receiver. A little old, right? But a living legend. And he was the kind of guy that had been talked about as a number 1 overall pick before he'd ever played his final season in college football. Do you know who this guy is? Do you know who I'm talking about?
Trevor Lawrence.
I'm talking about Andrew Luck specifically.
Oh man.
Andrew Luck, what did
Reggie
he do?
Wayne?
What did he do as a rookie?
Oh yeah.
What did Andrew Luck do as a rookie?
He crushed it. I haven't looked it up. Do you look it up?
He led an 11-5 Colts team to the playoffs, and he threw for 4,300 yards in 16 games. Is Caleb Williams Andrew Luck? I mean, I hope so. I don't think he's quite there, but if you told me he was close, and you told me that the Bears team was better, that means that if we're really being optimistic, like, Nick, now let's talk homerism. Let me drink some Kool-Aid here. Caleb could unironically throw for, if he's healthy for 17 games, he could throw for 4,400 yards and run for another 300, and it wouldn't be that statistically strange when you compare it to what Andrew Luck had if the Bears defense balls out. Because if they ball out, the Bears are probably going to get, what do you think? 3 to 4? No, not 3 to 4. 1.5 extra possessions compared to most other offenses. That's
Well,
another part of, yeah.
and Keenan Allen, right, will help extend more third downs too. That you'll have the ball more for more. Like all this ties together. Like it's, I mean, seriously, like this is not Kool-Aid stuff. Like it could be amazing 2024, even as a rookie, because of Keenan. If Keenan Allen's not there, I'm not having the same
Yes,
talk with you.
I agree. The football magic of a guy like Keenan Allen and a guy like DJ Moore. Let me explain both of them really fast. Yes, so much for final thoughts. Is Keenan Allen lets you not make a read. You can throw what is technically a passing play, but really it's a glorified handoff that your quarterback just has to place the ball because the ball's only going to Keenan. It's an option route to Keenan. He's even going to make the decision for you. He's going to pick
Mhm.
inside, outside, or he's going to pop the top and run like a slot fade or something. And all you have to do is throw him the ball. And that's something that Justin Herbert did to a ton of success. And to be honest with you, that's a regression candidate, Nick. I love Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is pure quarterback when you watch him play football. But without Keenan Allen, that is a big blow to the way they structure their offense. Now, obviously, changing off Kellen Moore, whole separate thing. Greg Roman, blah, blah, blah. Not a Chargers podcast, but it's more to say that Caleb gets to benefit because we talk 4,400 yards. I said that earlier. Any Bears fan that didn't immediately click off this podcast is going, Robert, what are you on and where do I get some? Right? But you have to remember, this is Caleb getting credit for other people's work, right? This is Keenan Allen catches a ball to pick up a third down. And everybody goes, way to go, Caleb. But it was Keenan running the route and he was throwing the ball nowhere else. This is double slants to Keenan Allen. He gets pinched by the inside linebacker in the nickel corner, opens up DJ Moore, who dusts a big, long outside corner that can't keep pace with him. DJ Moore, heading straight up the field, breaks the safety's tackle and runs for a 57-yard touchdown. And now that's a touchdown. And it's 57 yards. And it was an 8-yard completion on a slant to the boundary.
Yep.
Like this is what good offense looks like. Good offense looks like Patrick Mahomes having an easier time throwing for 5,000 yards than he did this season throwing for less. Patrick Mahomes was playing quarterback in hell this last year. What he was able to do with that cast is implicitly impressive, and the yards don't match because, of course, they don't. You're throwing to a bunch of guys that won't even catch the football for you.
Here's one in the same realm. Okay, I'm just reading this quote right here. This is from Ryan Poles, the ESPN 1000. Okay, for where we sit right now, I'll be honest with you, it's exceeded my wildest dreams in terms of really getting this roster into championship form. That I don't think that's unrealistic. Like
Championship?
like
Oh, I don't know about
no, no,
that.
no, no, no. Like into that form. Like you look
Right.
at the teams that actually can compete, like the Bears are starting in that window.
The goal isn't to make the playoffs. The
Mhm.
goal is to build a Super Bowl champion. And the playoffs are part of a Super Bowl champion,
Yep.
but they're not the end goal. And I think it's so easy for us as Bears fans, Nick, because we haven't made the playoffs in years. And the only two times we did, one of them was fun. The other was the saddest playoff appearance I've seen in my life. Against the Saints as
Javon Wims dropping that.
the inaugural 7 seed, the MVP. Like, there was so much of the Jimmy Graham walk off into the sunset. Like, I'm never coming back touchdown. I mean,
Bad.
it was so funny. You look back, and that has conditioned us to think that if the Bears could squeeze their way into the 6th seed, then hell yeah, right? But the goal is bigger than that. The goal is to square dance with the Niners and have the edge, Nick. I mean, the goal is to go to the Super Bowl as the favorite, which is lofty. That's
Yep.
lofty as hell. But the other thing I keep remembering, Nick, is that this is a quick change league, right? This is a league where franchises like the Bengals have never been able to get quarterback right. Then they get Burrow, and suddenly nobody says it anymore. This is a league where a team like I'm trying to think of another one, like Detroit, no matter what they do, they can't get out of their own way until suddenly they're everybody's favorite team in the league, right?
Can I okay. Can I dream big with you for a
Dream
little
big.
bit?
And then we'll shut the podcast off.
Yeah, then we need to. Okay. So this is if you made it to this point, hey, you're one of our guys. The AFC, Herbert, Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, Stroud. You go through the list, right?
Meat
Loaded.
grinder.
Okay. You go NFC, Dak, Purdy, Hurts. I mean, if you want to throw Love in there, I don't
Love
think he's
should
quite
be
there.
in there. I
I
know
don't
you
think he
don't
is.
think much of
It,
him.
it, it was a stretch of games. I get it. I want to see a bigger sample size. We saw bigger sample size with
Right
the other ones.
now, he's in
But-
there because
but-
Darnold's not.
But are those guys aren't at the same level as that other group?
No, they're not.
I mean, is this one of those things? Because you put it just talent wise. Are any of the guys from NFC higher than Caleb Williams?
I don't think so.
So
I don't think so.
could this be one of those things where, and this is the dream part, where it's like LeBron. LeBron's in the East. The East is way easier than the West. The West is battling it out for whoever gets to LeBron's, right? And then they have the finals. And it's like, okay, this year it's Mahomes. This year it's gonna be Burrow. Like the road, y'all, to flip this around is not as far. Now, it might not, I'm not saying Super Bowl 2024, but I'm saying to get to make some noise, it's gonna be a lot easier.
Now, Nick, I want to take this a step further
Oh.
because I agree with you, but we haven't had our tinfoil hat moment. So I'm going to put it on for a second. Look, Nick, you're never going to catch me, ever. I'm not about to imply it here, I promise, saying that football is rigged, because it's not. It happens way too fast. You could see it on film. These athletes are at crazy high speeds. But I will never get out of my head that it's always possible the NFL has a preferred winner, and that one of those for a long time has been the Packers. That's not just hate either. They get way too many calls in their favor, and it is proven every single year that they'll net way more penalties in their favor than anybody else in football.
Mhm.
And if you're telling me, Nick, because let's just talk about it,
Oh, I
that the
get it.
NFL wouldn't want to milk the absolute mess out of a star quarterback in Chicago,
In a
I
huge
think
market.
you're crazy. I think if the NFL, I think at the end of the day, look, Nick, maybe this becomes prescient. I hope it doesn't, because I would hate for it to be this way. But if you're telling me that it ends up being a bogus DPI call on a deep ball to DJ Moore that places the ball at the 1 yard line and turns into Caleb Williams zone reading his way into the end zone, chucking the ball into the third level, and the whole Bears offense freaking out as the team just etches their way into the playoffs, I won't be shocked. because I think this is something the NFL is salivating for. You think you won it in Chicago? You think Taylor Swift was good for the cap? Just wait until the Bears are
Well,
good.
well, you think Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown and guys came to Chicago on accident? Come on, y'all. You think Keenan Allen wasn't excited? He could have been mad after that trade.
You
He
think
he
Caleb
lost.
Williams, you think Caleb Williams' team wasn't reaching out to Colin Cowherd in late January saying that's not what we said? You think that Caleb Williams' camp wasn't reaching out to Adam Schefter saying that's not what we said because they're unexcited about being a part of this? Like,
Right.
I'm not trying to create any chills, Nick, but I'm just sitting here saying to me, this feels obvious. This feels more obvious than any Bears team's potential rise than I've ever covered. And
Right.
I've covered some teams that we had a lot of hope for, but this one has way less question marks than I'm accustomed to. Normally, we're sitting here saying, yeah, well, when Anthony Miller takes that step to be a wide receiver one, then this team's going to be really sweet. Normally, we're saying, well, when Terrell Smith finds it, or when Leonard Floyd becomes a tier 1 edge rusher, or when Akeem Hicks never gets hurt again in his life, or when this time Khalil Mack will stay healthy. Normally we're saying all kinds of things. Like this year, it was Nate Davis is going to be. This year we said Cody Whitehair and Lucas Patrick are going to be good enough at center. Next year we say we have a bona fide center whom we know can snap, and we have an athletic guy that can also play guard. And that's our interior before we probably draft a rookie. This is much safer. This is much safer. I'm so excited.
Well, you talking about like signing all those depth pieces also means the home run at 9, I think, is happening too. So like you get multiple home run swings to sprinkle into
if you crush
already
that pick,
solid base.
If you crush that pick, like if the Bears draft Malik Nabers and he's Jamar Chase, holy smokes. Or if the Bears, let's say that they trade down, they draft Layatu Latu, and he's almost immediately one of the most dynamic edge rushers in football off of unbelievable hand technique, even with a lack of bend. Or Dallas Turner or Jared Verse. It doesn't really matter. Maybe they draft Byron Murphy and he's just a monster, Nick. Like if they knock that first pick out of the park, this team could be really good.
Yep.
Really good.
We end on that. We end on the upswing, y'all.
All right.
We end on that.
Guys, thank you so much for hanging out. If you made it to this point in the podcast, DM us. We love hearing from you guys. Let me know if you're still feeling any audio issues. I know, Leonard, you mentioned that this podcast is generally pretty quiet, so I juiced the audio for you on this one in particular. No, Nick, that's on me because my mic peaks really easily, so I tend to record it at like 9 decibels lower than it is, and then I bring it up in post, but I stopped doing that because I got lazy, and that's on me. And I'm leaving that in the podcast. That's a method of accountability. And
well, I got the deep voice too, so let me know if you want me to get it closer, bring it in real close. I can do that.
You gonna whisper? You gonna teach everybody
about it's gonna get different decibel levels when we get into this season. I'm telling you, you think we're hyped now. Wait till we bust way more into the schedule and talk about how the Saints can't compete with us and the Seahawks can't compete with us.
If we're actually not talking about being scrappy for once, yes, let's get there. Bears fans, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, bear down. Thanks so much for bearing with us.